All right, back. Another episode of The Climb. Best bud here, Frank Venus. It is good to see you, my friend.
Glad
Um,
to be back.
I'm acting like we just didn't talk for 45 minutes before this thing. But hey, here we are. I think this might be your third, fourth time. And
Third time.
it's been a good conversation every time.
Yeah. Third time. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely have enjoyed the climb this past year, just giving people a little insight on some conversations that I have with the close ones in my life, and how I value friendship so much. It's one of the most things I value, and I'm so privileged to have such good people around me. But with that comes really awesome conversations, and the things that we talk about on a constant basis. So definitely appreciate you kind of sharing more about yourself, and we're gonna do more of that today.
Yeah, happily. I got plenty of stories. Not a lot of wisdom, but plenty of stories.
Well, so what is it called? Someone's trash is another person's gold.
Yeah,
So who knows, man? Our trash might be pretty worth a lot of to someone.
yeah, sure.
That's great. Yeah. So Frank and I were talking about the concept of a learner's mindset, and really, I admire Frank for his journey, and being so close with him, I understand a lot of where he's gone from, going into college, what he was trying to do in a career, and then doing something different. And I was telling Frank before this call that he's always had this, ability to kind of be present in the moment and make the best out of the opportunity he has. And there got to a point where, it didn't seem as if, he was really worried about, the distant future, but kind of just took it as, the opportunity, approached him. We actually talked about one of my favorite sayings. I've said it on here before. It's the analogy of you can get from New Jersey to California in the pitch dark, driving a car with 20 feet of headlight, and all you have to do is just keep going 20 feet as the road unfolds. And Frank, I do think that your journey here in life has kind of embodied that, especially coming out of college and all the different things that you've tried, and maybe making some risks and sacrifices that others your age wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate the kind of all the steps that have gotten me to where I am today. But maybe to go back to what you said about college, the one thing I will preface, I pride myself on that headlight mentality. Although I will say, the early years, especially when you're thinking career in undergrad, college at Penn State, I did not necessarily have that. It was like fake it till you make it. I was spent a lot of time, especially the first couple years at school, struggling with. I have no idea what I'm gonna do. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing for my career, what I want to do. The same issues that I think a lot of students struggle with. But somewhere along the line, I think I just kind of let go of some of that stress. It was always there, but it was more of just it felt like I got pretty good at just picking something and saying, okay, let's try this and just go for this for a little bit, and then we'll move on to the next thing. Uh, Fast forward, there's been a couple of those pivots that have happened over the years, but that probably started like right at the end of school, where it was, like you mentioned, wanted to go to med school, wanted to become a doctor, then the type of doctor changed, then the type of job in medical field changed, and then it turned out maybe being a clinician wasn't for me. I'm not that good of a student and didn't really want it that badly. So all that to say, there was a lot of those just let me study for the MCAT and I'm gonna do this and do this for a year, and didn't do well, and then after that pivot to, well, now what do I do?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, there was a lot of that, and I feel like I've kind of built my current my current life and career that way. And I kind of pride myself on that. I've never had a clear track of what I wanted to do or be when I grow up, and I still don't know.
Yeah, it's funny because I think if you were to poll anyone that's watching this, majority of people don't. I didn't think there's a crazy stat about people changing directions or majors when they go into college, because yeah, who knows? I myself did as well, and the one thing I hear, and right, I witnessed it, but I want to highlight this is like you, in every way, in every turn, you can look at yourself in the mirror and know that you tried it out, right?
Mhm.
And I think that was starting to what I could really appreciate from afar, maybe giving you some, internal peace of like, all right, well, I tried it and that's okay. Let me try something else. And it's almost as if you were not just, all right, let me, I'm gonna try to be a doctor, or I'm gonna go into construction. No, you were trying everything out and following, different passions in your life, which a lot of people, can't say for themselves. It certainly is not easy to kind of, I wouldn't say give up, but to shift, different, perception of what you want to be in life. But if you don't try certain things, that's one thing. The other thing is you really not only tried, but you leveraged all of your experiences into the next opportunity, and like you never probably knew that you were going to see these great views in the pitch dark from New Jersey to California. But hey,
No, yeah, I think that's really important because definitely don't want to give the impression that it's as if I'm doing these intense pivots every 2 3 years to try something new and I'm trying something new. I think going back to that learner's mindset was also important to still acknowledge that if you want, again, thinking from maybe more of a career perspective, you still want to try and get good at something and build a knowledge and sometimes you just have to stick in an environment and an industry for long enough that you can do that without constantly ping-ponging all over the place.
mm-hmm.
So I think that's where, like, obviously for anyone that doesn't know, currently still work in healthcare, just now on the business side, more on the consulting side, but started off with the dream of I'm going to be a doctor, but then that didn't work out. So let me work. I worked as a scribe over doing the midnight shifts and in the ED and all that. Realized okay, this definitely isn't for me. But I let me go into more corporate healthcare or business healthcare. So like each thing was like picking up new knowledge, learning new skills. I think I said before we started this recording, I didn't even touch Excel until my second job or something, and that's where I learned, and that's where now it sounds silly to say I work in like business and I didn't learn Excel in college, but that's how it works. That was the case. So
Mm-hmm.
it constantly wasn't just let me try something new, completely different. It was how do I
Yeah.
take my experience and kind of frame it in the story to use that for the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the concept of you certainly gave everything, you had. You did and studied organic chem over summer break. Probably the hardest course that anyone has to take in college that is in that field, um, over summer break. And you were pretty consistent too with your studying. It's not like you just were having fun at Penn State in the summer. It was a serious class. When everyone was 23, young, and out of college, finding whatever job they could get to get money to go to the bars on the weekend, you were scribing these crazy hours in the morning in the emergency room, which just all that itself, I mean, I think doesn't get, you don't get enough credit for of, hey, not only did you just consider different things, but your effort level into it was, hey, if I'm going to try this, I'm going to give it my best, and I'm going to take away whatever I can, whatever skill I can, to just kind of leverage into the next way. And the cool thing about it, right, and you're almost in this consulting client services to describe your business from a high level. um to get there from doctor is like, well, how did we get there? But it's almost like you were sculpting this thing and molding clay, and you're like, all right, it's not going to look like that, I might as well try something else. Okay, it's not going to look like that. And I think the flexibility in that, and I think this learner's mindset of kind of just continuing your growth, but also being patient and okay with that, is just completely lost by others.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I think that again, first on the learner's mindset. Yeah, I mean, it actually in my current field, it's probably I've met other people that started off wanting to go to medical school or become a physician assistant and be a practicing clinician that for whatever reason realized that wasn't really for them, and but they still wanted to learn more about healthcare. They cared about
Mhm.
they were interested in the industry, they were interested in the work, and so that's how they built up their career and their knowledge base. Had to pivot on their focus, right? But they they stayed within the pursuing that interest and learning more on
Mhm.
the industry. And I think that's where that's what I've done, and just continually just chasing that interest.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other part is, yeah, I mean, the comfort when you talked about being, comfortable where you're at sometimes, and I think that is it's like it's okay to be content and to realize, hey, this isn't forever, but this is where I'm at right now, and this is what I'm gonna do. To then, but in keeping in the picture, the frame of, hey, I'm gonna use this to do the next thing or to try and pursue the next
Mhm.
opportunity that comes. Because you never know. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've talked about it in here before. May not been of us, but there's a big difference between complacency and contentment,
mm-hmm.
and it is wild when you think two kind of similar words, or actually when you think about it, like very, very different,
Mm-hmm.
and how they could, how they lie in the human experience, could be really beneficial and kind of harmful in the other sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to get to your point in regards to the learner's mindset, I mean, from what I hear from you is kind of this learner's mindset is kind of helping you find your purpose,
Mm-hmm.
in life. And I want everyone to look up this term, and I'm going to describe it, but it's probably not going to be perfect. It's called, it's the Japanese term called ikigai. Ikigai. Just Google it. They'll figure it out. Use Siri, figure it out. But the idea of ikigai is, I believe, these few things is finding something that you're good at, finding something that you're passionate about, and something that you can get paid for. It's the Japanese said this, not me. And it's funny because it's like, well, hey, that's kind of true. Like, not everyone could be, an Olympic swimmer or a linebacker for the Giants or whatever. Like, you got to find something. You got to do something that you're good at, something that you could be passionate about, and then something you could, obviously like make money and leverage that. Like, you have to have your certain skills show. Um, and it's obviously in a perfect world we'd all have our dreams, um but we're all given a certain skill set, and it's really cool, for you to not take one business class ever, but you have the skill sets to just be phenomenal in consulting and in any client services level. And for the job you have in the field you have, it's not easy to breach. So it's quite impressive, not only just the field, the industry level, but just the scope of the work itself. And God, I just have to think that if you didn't approach it as that 20 foot at a time and just gathering items you found on the road as tools as you would go into the darkness in the Midwest and off to the prairies of the United States, going to that California analogy, things would be different, but that's not the case.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember when there have been several times where when I first got, I guess, my a previous role where it was, I look around and all your peers are MBA, business, masters of health and administration, and all that, and I've never even looked at like a financial statement, or I don't even know what a financial statement was,
mhm.
or even what a business model was. I had no idea. So it was just very much, yeah, you gotta lean into the opportunity of figuring it out, and then go from there. Don't get too caught up in, oh no, like I don't know how I'm gonna make this work.
Yeah, yeah, and I think when we talk about, right, like the learner's mindset, like, sure, there's always something to learn, but there is a part of, your confidence or your own self-belief. At the end of the day, they might have MBAs and doctorates, but you're all working in the same company. You're all in the same spot. It's like, when we golf and, maybe we hit a ball too close to a cart on a couple holes over. Hey, listen, man, we paid the same price. This is a public golf course. You can be mad, but hey, we all paid, $80 to play here. And I think that's something that, really being confident in yourself and knowing that, hey, I'm going to make the best of this situation, and that I belong. It helps, enforce that learner's mindset, not to just learn, but to grow as well.
It does. And to clarify, you're referring to yourself, not to me playing golf.
Never. You lace it down the
Mine
fairways. Are
are
you kidding me?
straight down the fairway every time.
No way, man. Yeah, that's 100% me. Yeah. But I'm sure people get the point.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about the topic of, you know, what's that way of, when people feel fraudulent, what is it called?
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome,
Yeah,
right?
I had it. It's a terrifying beast.
Yeah. Well, tell me more about it.
Well, it was my last promotion at work. It was coupled with an acquisition where, I mean, admittedly, it was a role that was appropriate in my current job, but then as with some reorganization, it kind of gets remapped and was probably like working, had similar peers that had tremendous more experience than I
Hmm.
did, were older than I was, and it was very much made me feel for a while like scared. Go to a point, scared that I just was, what am I doing? Like
Yep.
I have no idea what I'm doing. But then also, you just, and I fell trapped to it too. Is you're constantly questioning, you're constantly feeling like you have to like prove something, or you're constantly feeling like you're worried, like what are people thinking about me, or what are people thinking about my experience or my thoughts, and you just gotta eventually let it go. You gotta just
Hmm.
accept where you're, again, going back to everything we've just been talking about. Accept where you're at, make the most of the opportunity, and just figure it out. Be willing to learn and say, I don't really know. I gotta figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. I may not know now, but I'm gonna figure it out. I'm trying to my best, and hey, who cares? What's the worst thing that could happen in the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day? And is it really going to be the end of the world? Yeah, and it's funny. We're highlighting, a lot of, what seems like a smooth road, but your road was anything but smooth. Like everyone else, right? Everyone has these challenges, these obstacles that sit in their way. I've described them as everyone has speed bumps. Sometimes those speed bumps are mountains. Um, but of recent, I've been saying a lot that, listen, sometimes you look at them as speed bumps, but really they could be speed boost. It's all about,
Yeah.
how you're, kind of perceiving it in yourself of, hey, I'm really grateful and I've grown from that. I mean, we've been talking about your past experiences and how you use them as boost, not these different bumps that, oh, I'm never going to get to the peak of the mountain. No,
Mm-hmm.
you've just only gotten stronger to, climb even, further.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the using a speed boost. I think that's a great mentality to have. I say this about work all the time. I love the chaos when it gets chaotic, when it's whether it's the mergers and the uncertainty and everyone's head spinning, or we don't, maybe again it's client services, so maybe there's a risk a client is pulling an account, or it's again, right, there's a scare of layoffs or a scare of whatever it may
Hmm.
be. Like I tend to just see the chaos as just, again, it's with the chaos can potentially, sure, it can be unfortunate. A lot of people see the downsides in that, and there are downsides, but there's like things happen for reasons, and like, there's
Yeah.
always opportunity in that chaos.
Yeah. And I think the beauty, at least, what I've gathered from you is you'll leave it at that, while others will continue to ruminate on that idea, they could mess up, and just they keep going through scenarios and what happened here, what could happen here, and it's just so, we all get stuck in our own thoughts, but we have to find ways to just shut it down.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, that is kind of, a trait of yours, a really positive one. But how do you reinforce that? Maybe it's a takeaway that some people could work on themselves.
How do I reinforce that? I think, and maybe we've talked about this before, but I think this is something. This is definitely a concept that comes up all the time. It is the feeling of, and I'm going to butcher what it's called, but it's like being present, like acknowledging, especially as you start going down the path of ruminating on potential scenarios and what's going to happen, is just like taking a step back, just like acknowledge, where am I? Okay, I'm in this room in my house, and it's like, all right, what's going to happen if, let's say, worst case scenario? It's like, all right, well, I'm still here, and like we still have things, like there's still so much to be grateful for, and like going through that checklist, like from the very basic thing. And I,
Mm-hmm.
like, this is gonna sound cheesy, and I know you're not gonna believe me, but I mean this. I think it's like, I'm blessed. I have two legs that work, and then I can and it's just like literally at the most basic level, and then it just expands that. Because then when you start thinking like that, it's like work doesn't seem like that big of a deal, and I think that's what helps me. It
Yeah.
sounds so corny, but it's I mean it. I think about that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, gratitude is so powerful. It is so powerful. I know I've been speaking to you about, me writing, my memoir, and there's been times where I've been so emotional, and it's been, good emotions. And, there was a time where I just had to call, my parents and speak with my dad and just share how like unbelievably grateful I was for them. And he, said, everything all right? I'm like, I mean, listen, like how could everything not be all right? Like, I'm so grateful to have gone through this experience, to be where I am. And I'm just, I'm not upset that it happened whatsoever. I'm so grateful for everything. And it's such a different perspective. Um, it's really, really powerful. So I'm glad. I mean, listen, it might be simple, but I totally agree. There's a lot of times that Christina and I'll be like, look at, we have a house, we have dog, we have beautiful dog Rover, we have
Yeah,
food. I mean, like, that in itself, we're rich amongst, many, many, many people in this
yeah.
world.
I
So
think that gratitude and that just being present in your given moment, it can be so important, because I think it facilitates everything we're talking about, like the learner's mindset and the headlight mentality. Like all that comes from that, just being able to be present, and some gratitude there, and then take that one step in front of the other, and acknowledge that there's going to be bumps. Like, yeah, like my situation is could go south tomorrow. I don't know, but whatever, you got to just accept that it's going to, and just make the most of today.
God, that's it's really ironic that you said that, right? Not that I hope things go south, but I was, I really, really hope they don't. But in all reality, they very well could.
Yeah.
That's a possibility, and it's actually really funny. Today I was writing. I'm quite a bit through my story, and rather almost at the end, wrapping things up. I was talking about, at the end, obviously, talking about my third hospitalization, and getting out of the hospital for the third time, being hospitalized 3 times in the span of 6 years, makes you question whether, I should be working the career I'm working, living the life I'm living. Am I going to be one of those people? Someone has, a long-term illness that is just constantly going in and out of the hospital. These are all legitimate questions, and questions I had to ask myself. And, it was almost like I had to prove to myself that, like, hey, this is something that I need to get it back on the horse, or I need to adjust if I can't. And, it's a long-winded story, but I've written a lot about, different stressors and triggers that have, kind of led into, different manic episodes of mine. Um, and it's always been kind of black and white. Like, okay, well, these manic triggers were, around, and it caused me an episode. And I write out this timeline. I was very intentional of jumping back into something because I just had to, either make it work, or adjust. Very sink or swim. And this timeline, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. February 1st, I was admitted to the hospital of 2020. February 14th, I was released from the hospital. As many people have already heard from me, and if you haven't, the manic episode is very fast, intense, extreme, where it takes me, if it's not treated, is to a place of, delusion and psychosis, and as extreme as, one could get. And with that huge height comes a massive depression to follow. That typically takes months for me to recover. And I didn't have, months in my mind to recover. I had to obviously take some time. But I jumped back into work, and got to work with a new doctor and new routine. I made a health plan action just in case anything, were to happen. I know where to go, what to use for an emergency medicine. And, I jumped back into work on, I believe it was the 11th of March, 2020. The world shut down on the 13th of 2020. We were all sent home. Part of my recovery was to be out of the house in person with people. So that was completely gone. And it was really, really, really staggering. And it took a little bit for me to kind of feel normal again. And, this has been a little bit of a long story here, but back to the timeline, I was told on May 21st by my therapist, hey, you finally sound like you again. So a couple months, after getting released, more than a couple months, almost like over 3 months after getting released from the hospital, I sound like me again. Just the next month, things are really picking up with me, at work. I'm starting to do, well again. And there was a lot of financial pressure that I had, like, hey, how am I going to pay for these bills if I can't work, if I'm going to be out of work? So things started to pick up. In July, I moved in with Christina. September, we brought home Rover. October, Team Garbo received that award right there, the Community Advocate Award from Nomni. January, I received an award for bringing in new business at my company. And March, we bought a home. And June, Christina and I were engaged. So unbelievably, it was the first time I ever wrote this down.
I didn't even realize that timeline.
I didn't either, to be honest.
You want to talk about the headlights? Louise.
Yeah, it's a not to boost my own horn, but it's a heroic comeback story. And to bring it back to your point, right, of hey, the road's not always smooth. I wrote that timeline down, and I wrote this morning. Little did everyone know, I had a lot of triggers during that time. I was getting back into work, a lot of stress with work, even though I was doing well, there was stress. I, had to move into a new home. That's a huge trigger for people, have with bipolar disorder and all these different things. And I described it, to my psychiatrist as like, hey, I'm swimming in shark infested waters. It feels like I'm, doing that. And, before I spoke with him, I even took my emergency medication, and I followed out the action plan that I made for myself. So if I didn't have that action plan, it was very, what Christina and I thought, built communication to talk. Hey, maybe I should take this. My sleep's been kind of bad. I'm a little bit high in energy when lack of sleep could be the start of mania. And that was like the first time ever I intervened with myself and was in tune. But all of this was rainbows and sunshines on the timeline. And, obviously if I'm taking that medicine, I had to talk to my doctor. And I'm telling him this. I'm like, yeah, man. I'm just like in it. Like, I mean, I even wrote a blog on Team Garbo. People can go back and look at it. Swimming in shark infested waters, about being surrounded with stress and trigger. But the beauty of, that new psychiatrist that I work with, and I'm still working today, is fantastic. Referred to me by your father, and man, he's like, listen, you're always going to be swimming in shark infested waters. That's just life. And I was like, shit, that is such a good point. And it's, a beautiful comeback story on paper, but man, like I was swimming through shark infested waters, but that's just life. You're gonna be surrounded by sharks, and how you handle the situation probably is gonna base if you get bit or not.
Yeah, I'm gonna just go full circle here, but I mean, would you say, I mean, that experience, because you're right, I never really thought about it that way. Like on paper, that year, if someone just didn't know anything else about you, but just was like, oh, like AJ crushed it that year.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm not saying you didn't, but they're not seeing all of the kind of, the under the water, what's going
Yeah.
on. But do you think that some of that, to tie that back to what you're just saying, with the, you're always going to be in shark infested, that's life. You're always going to be in shark infested waters. Is that kind of like that learner's mindset where it's just, yeah, it was the 3 hospitalizations, 6 years, but you each time it's like you learn a little bit more, you learn a little bit more, you're
Mm-hmm.
figuring it out. And like what you did was you just figured out, still learning, sure, but you figured out and like how to better handle those shark infested waters. So now you have this, you look back and you're like, oh yeah, look at this. Like it worked. It was hard, it was stressful, but it's always gonna, like you were saying, like it could go sideways tomorrow. So
Yeah. To your
that's
point,
pretty
yes. Not to give away this whole part of the memoir, but just
spoiler alert.
paragraphs before, I was describing the speed bump or really speed boost, and
Mm-hmm.
how I've learned from the climb. I'm grateful for the climb, and yeah, I mean, to let's keep circling it back, right? Like I find this similar philosophy in your story,
Mm-hmm.
of that, hey, if we took a bird's eye view of where Frank is now and where he started, oh, how wonderful is that? I wish I was Frank. Hey, Frank earned everything he had. He did not have an easy road. It was hard. He was not pointed to this. His parents or family members aren't the CEO of his company right now and handing him anything. He probably, like me, no one probably knew the title of his job when he was in college. So yeah, dude, it's just yeah, I agree. I think it's a lot of, learner's mindset, growth mindset, and being just, grateful for it. I mean, a lot of things that you just said.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it was so important to tell your story. It's one to hear mine, but um, there's a lot of important things you can take away from someone's story if you just listen,
Yeah.
with an open mind.
Yeah. Well, and I hear I appreciate that because you are right, and it can always be a journey. But I hear the grateful, like as you're even speaking, it's like, yeah, it's always back to that gratefulness and just
Hmm.
each bump turn it into a speed bump. I like that.
Yeah, and listen, this has been like the theme of the climb and Team Garbo. It's a lot about community too. It's hard to go out this journey by yourself, but just to be reminded, for us to remind each other of, gratitude and the power of it, and to reinforce, like, yo, yeah, you might think that sounds stupid, but I think you thinking that you have 2 legs and you're grateful for it is like poetic. So, you know, I think sometimes you have to share and show your cards to people, because you don't know what they're going to show back. And,
Hmm.
um, knowing, not that you need it, my reinforcement, but there's an aspect of, someone out there that maybe not be getting that right now from someone else. But if you open yourself up, if you're vulnerable, you'd be so surprised the, common interest and beliefs that you have. And maybe some new ones that you pick up on. So, I mean, yeah, gratitude, learner's mindset, a lot is just, seems like pretty elementary, but could be a massive change in everyone's life.
Yeah, agreed. It's hard, but it is.
All right, that was super duper awesome. Somehow, some way, we just like completely did a vortex of both of our stories and twined them together.
That was nice.
Probably couldn't do that again if we tried.
Yeah,
So
while we're on the business of showing awards,
let's see it.
look at that puppy. You read that? Is that
Oh, baby.
March Madness overall champ, right on the mantle.
Now, what does that entail? Is that a?
That was just the work like bracket challenge.
Oh, it's legitimately a March Madness award.
That's a legitimate award. I was the overall winner of men's and women's. I had the highest bracket score. That's legitimate for me. I know.
And
To anyone listening that doesn't know me, this probably doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but if you know me, that's a big deal.
now, did you have any, I guess, like performance enhancer influence to this or at all?
You asking if I had like ChatGPT do it for me?
No, I was thinking of another brilliant,
Oh,
maybe an actual individual.
Kelly?
Yeah.
Yeah, she might have actually. I don't remember if she helped with this one or not. She might have, but she probably did a little bit.
Yeah.
She gets credit for pretty much most of my wins.
Yeah. I mean, she's pretty awesome and is more knowledgeable on sports than most people. I do want to say though, I think another thing, just speaking of, your company, a lot of people are just looking for like, hey, pay me for my time and see you later. You work for a remote company, yet you and what you've described, and you can certainly describe it better than I have such a connection with a lot of the employees, and that comes from the top of what they're trying to do. And I think that's extremely intentional. From them, but also it's something that I know you value. Let's be very clear to everyone watching this. If Frank wanted to get a job in his scope of work and with the title that he has, he could. There's no doubt about it. But you choose to stay with the company, and I feel like a lot of people aren't valuing that. I know it's hard to find work right now, but they're not valuing what a company can bring when it comes to community and things of that nature. If you want to touch on that, it's really interesting.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm at the benefit, and it's certainly not me. I'm at the benefit of, yeah. I'm very fortunate to have found an organization to work with that it just values connectivity and genuinely, like not. I know a lot of companies do, and a lot of companies try, and this isn't just like your average virtual happy hour. This is they put a lot of effort and investments into getting people together, encouraging. It's not about going back to the office, but encouraging get group, meet up, do work. I mean, do work activities. I was just I think last week. No, last week was the holiday. 2 weeks ago, in Chicago, doing a team outing where it was just my work team, doing a little ping pong bar event thing. Where it's just nothing crazy, nothing fancy, but just an excuse to go out to the office, work together for 2 days, and just be in the same room as one another. And I think I've come to value it. Of course, working remote has its benefits, but I've come to value that connection because it can be lonely, and I think it just makes the work when you feel like you have people that are like-minded, and they don't have to be your best friend, but just you can share thoughts with and opinions with. It's helpful. You're going through the same journey with them, and it definitely makes it more enjoyable.
Yeah, and I'm I'm putting you on the spot there to talk about your company to bring back the Frank that wanted to be a doctor, and listen, I can relate, and I don't need to go into it, but I wanted to be a chiropractor, and I got a D in bio, and I said, hey, that's about it. That's it for me. I'm not doing anything. There's a bigger story behind that, but we don't need to talk about it. But the concept that I know from you and even for myself is like, hey, I wanted to help people and I wanted to be around people and I wanted to communicate with people. And what can I do? What career can I do? And you might think, for instance, Frank maybe wanted to help people and he wanted to be around and social, not socialize, but, communicate and facilitate with people. All right. The doctor does that, but there's other things that you can do. Going back to the Ikigai, like there's other things and other jobs and other companies that can help you express your passion, express your beliefs and your values. And, hey, you're getting paid for. Is everything going to be perfect? Probably not. And, maybe this is, not the last stop for Frank. Maybe he's going to keep growing in different spaces. But, it's not as easy to just snap your fingers and have that perfect job, but you can find, a place that scratches the passions and values and beliefs that you have. And I think that's really important. I think it wasn't probably the easiest of journeys to get there, as we talked about. But when you take a broader scope of this, a lot of people need to start focusing on, what makes them truly happy. And, maybe the title of the job and the scope of what you're doing, you think might bring a lot of happiness, but there's a lot of things you can do and give to this world that can, kind of bring you to that same level.
Yeah. Well said. I agree.
All right, Frank, what do you want to end on? You got anything, any fun advice or any, I guess, advice for people to keep, the ball straight on the golf course since you are not slicing it or
Well,
hooking it?
I feel like my March Madness overall champ was the big mic drop. But no, I think I guess biggest thing from this conversation is again, I just very self-reflective talking about my journey and my experience from a kind of career life perspective. It's just kind of constantly try and find your narrative, the story, and
Mm.
like real trying in that finding of the narrative is like you're realizing, okay, what's going well, what can I be grateful about, how can I use this, where's this going to take me for my next step or my next thing, and that's how it just kind of facilitates that headlight mentality, which I don't know if that's if you don't use that, I think that's how you should refer to it now. But yeah, it's that's how you keep taking that next step. Just
Headlight mentality. I like it. I'll have to edge you into the copyright or something.
yeah, yeah. Just put my name on the paper somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. To summarize that, everyone be empowered by the climb because it can be really, really powerful when you do. And I think that's what Frank was saying. It's all
Yeah,
about the climb and being empowered by it. So awesome. All right, man. Well, thank you for joining. Thank you for sharing. It's not the easiest thing kind of opening up about good or bad. And I appreciate you kind of letting everyone in because there was a lot of golden nuggets that people could take away.
yeah. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
All right, brother. Love you. And everyone, thank you for watching another episode.